Welcome, you're listening to Upstart Live. This is our launch show. I'm Ahmed Yusuf.
And I'm Lisa Berg. Every Friday we broadcast live from La Trobe University in Bandura. Each week we tackle current affairs, news, politics, and sports.
But Lisa, you know, I hear you're quite the shuffler.
Yeah, that's a funny little thing about me. I play a lot of cards. I've recently decided to teach all my Australian friends one of my favorite card games from Canada called cribbage.
You kind of lose a lot, don't you?
I do. I've lost all my cribbage skills in this country. I don't know what happened. But I'm really good at shuffling cards, so that's something I have.
I guess that's the consolation, I guess.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's a sore spot for me, all my losses. I've heard you've had quite a few high-profile Twitter blocks.
Yeah, all right. So a certain Mr. Tim Cahill blocked me on Twitter just before the 2014 World Cup because I was tweeting a lot about, like, you know, he probably shouldn't play, or he shouldn't play a major role in the World Cup, you know, because the Socceroos have to regenerate the squad and all that kind of stuff. And I was tweeting that, and he didn't like that.
No.
So he was like, Ahmed, I don't even know you, but I'm going to block you.
Oh, no. Well, anyways, let's go on to our show today, our big launch show. What do we have?
We find out what's happening in the Australian Republican debate.
Awesome. That's something I know very little about, so I'm excited for that one. I think we also have Fox Sports commentator Simon Hill is helping us preview the A-League final series.
Yeah, Simon is he's the doyen of Australian football, the voice of Australian football or soccer for the uninitiated. And we have an update on the 2 journalists detained in Malaysia in March.
Great.
Yep. But first, before that, we're going to the headlines with Alana Mazurk. Hey, Alana.
Hi, guys. This is exciting. Yay, launch for us. Okay, so for getting straight into the news headline, a powerful magnitude 6.5 earthquake has hit Japan's southwestern island of Kyushu, collapsing homes and leaving at least 2 people dead and injuring many. Thousands have been left without gas and electricity, and as the quake struck at 9:26 p.m. last night at local time, the Japan's meteorological, oh my God, why did I write that? Agency said there was no danger of a tsunami. Citizens have been warned of aftershocks, which will likely continue throughout the week. The federal government will pursue Clive Palmer and his business to recover almost $74 million in entitlements owed to sacked Queensland nickel workers. Mr. Palmer has already been criticised for not paying workers their entitlements after the collapse of a company he ultimately owns. The bill will be the largest payer under FEG for a corporate collapse. Information sessions will be held in Townsville so former workers can lodge claims.
Thanks for that update, Alana.
No worries. And I've still got more. A London court has ordered disgraced 86-year-old entertainer Rolf Harris to stand trial in January next year on his new sexual assault charges. Harris, who is currently serving a sentence of 5 years and 9 months on previous sexual assault convictions, appeared at the Southwark Crown Court via video link in Stafford Prison. He was asked to enter a plea on 8 charges of indecent assault and sexual touching of girls and women aged between 12 and 27. Harris entered a plea of not guilty on all 8 charges, and the trial start date will be January 9th next year. Canada has taken a significant step towards allowing dying people to seek medical help to end their lives after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government unveiled a bill Thursday to legalise assisted suicide. After much back and forth, political parties have said members of Parliament will be free to vote their conscience for or against the bill. The father of a Melbourne toddler allegedly murdered by her mother has spoken out about finding out his daughter had died, describing it as the worst moment of his life. Miss Nakat, 22, was charged with 1 count of murder yesterday afternoon.
It's the worst day of my life. I've had to go and identify the body. I'd never think I'd do that in my whole life.
That there was the father of young 14th-year-old Sanya Saib, whose body was found partially submerged in the creek in Melbourne's Heidelberg West on Sunday. She was examined by a psychiatric nurse and a doctor in custody this morning, and the magistrate later excused the mother, Miss Nakat, from appearing in court today over concerns with her mental state. And that's all for the news headlines, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that update, Alana. It's 1:05. You're listening to Upstart Live's first launch show. You can listen at upstart.net.au.
Yes, you can. In a two-part series, Naeem Kurt, one of our reporters, speaks exclusively to Timothy Mayfield, the National Director of the Australian Republican Movement, on the interest in the movement over the past 12 months.
Where's the issue of an Australian Republic at in 2016? The first episode deals with the background of the Australian Republic debate since the 1999 referendum.
And how the group is preparing itself for the first referendum, for a future referendum whether Australia should replace the monarchy with an Australian head of state.
You'd be forgiven for thinking the Republican debate in Australia has been done and dusted. In 1999, Australians voted clearly in a federal referendum to reject the change to our constitution to replace the Queen with an Australian as head of state. But now, 17 years on, the calls for Australia's head of state to be replaced with an Australian are growing louder than ever.
Helped in part by an internal revitalisation and the replacement last year of our Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who was a staunch monarchist, by Republican supporter Malcolm Turnbull, the Australian Republican movement has gone from strength to strength. In a two-part series, Timothy Mayfield, the National Director of the Australian Republican Movement, speaks exclusively on where the Australian Republican Movement is at in 2016, the explosive growth in memberships and interest in the group over the past 12 months, and how the ARM hopes to harness that power to create a people movement.
There's a real issue within the Australian community about our overall awareness that we have an Australian constitution to begin with, but particularly about what's in our constitution. So when we advocate for a republic, obviously that's a reform that we want to bring in, and we think it's very important to reflect our modern identity as a modern multicultural nation. But there's a greater purpose at work here, and that is by promoting a republic and restarting a conversation about our constitution, then we hope and expect that we'll also be educating people, and particularly young people, about the fact that we have this constitution, that it's our founding document, it's fundamental to our system of government.
So what exactly is the Australian Republican movement and what are its aims?
At its most fundamental, it's about replacing the Queen with an Australian head of state. The Queen is referred to, or the British monarch is in our constitution, as the constitutional head of state in Australia's system.
Under our current constitution, the Queen serves as head of the Australian monarchy and is represented by the Governor-General. The Governor-General, on behalf of the Queen, has the power to appoint ministers, judges and ambassadors, issue writs for elections, and to give royal assent to legislation so it can become law. Most controversially, though, the Governor-General, through the Queen, also has certain reserved powers to dismiss governments and prime ministers, as most famously happened in 1975 with the Whitlam government.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
However, for the ARM, the issue of becoming a republic is just as much a symbolic matter as it is a procedural one.
We still think there's this incredibly important symbolic statement that is made by having someone from another country, an unelected king or queen, someone else's, who's asleep when we're awake, at the top of our system. So that's what a republic's about. It's most simple. It's about independence. It's about having an Australian system of government that truly reflects who we are and who we've become over the 115-odd years since we federated.
The agitation for a referendum on whether to become a republic began a quarter of a century ago in 1991, after it became Labor Party policy under Prime Minister Paul Keating.
Australia should become a republic by the year 2001. We are all Australians. We share a continent. We share a past, a present and a future. And our head of state should be one of us.
A constitutional convention was held in 1998 and a model for a republic was arrived upon where the Queen and Governor-General would be replaced by a president elected by a two-thirds majority of Parliament. The model was then put to a referenda vote in 1999.
Hello and welcome to Seven's coverage of the 1999 Republican referendum, Queen or Country. I'm Stan Grant. As we saw when voted today, there are two questions in this referendum. One, to alter the Constitution to make Australia a republic. The other, to insert a preamble into our Constitution.
Many Australians disagreed with the model put forward, and as a result, the vote failed.
I voted no. I want to have a say in who they elect. That's all.
This fact is not lost on the Australian Republican movement, and as a result, they do not formally campaign for any specific model.
What some of your listeners might not realise is we've had a vote on a republic before in 1999. It didn't go so well. It went down, albeit narrowly. And one of the reasons that it failed was because even though a majority of Australians wanted a republic with an Australian head of state instead of the British monarch, the Queen, at the top of our system, we couldn't agree on how we would elect an Australian head of state, whether the people would do that directly or whether it would happen through the parliament. So the reason that we don't advocate for a specific model at the ARM is because we don't want to risk those divisions re-emerging. Instead, we advocate for a process in which the people get to decide which model they prefer in a fully democratic way, perhaps through a plebiscite or some other means. And we hope and expect that once that process is unfolded, that whatever model is ultimately chosen, everyone feels like their voice has been heard and we can all unite as one to get behind that model in a referendum campaign.
The fact that the ARM is not campaigning currently on a specific constitutional republic model has drawn criticism from some quarters. In January of this year, Paul Sheehan described it as the dumb and dumber approach and urged the movement to settle on a specific model.
I read that piece, and you'll be unsurprised to hear I respectfully disagree with Paul Sheehan on this case. Look, there's a lot of people who'd like us to come up with a model, and no one would like that more than the monarchists. There are a group of Australians out there, some organisations that quite fiercely advocate for keeping the status quo, and they would like nothing more than for us to announce a model, because then they'd go to work dividing Republicans against each other, casting doubt and aspersions against whatever model was chosen. And we just don't think that's the way to go.
Clearly the road ahead for the ARM is challenging, not just in combating the monarchists, but also in dealing with those who support the objectives of the movement, but are critical of the movement's method of approach. In next week's episode, Tim speaks about the growth in interest in the ARM, how the movement is harnessing that interest, and how they plan to convert that interest into a genuine people's movement.
That was Naim Kurt's first part of a two-part series on the Republican debate. Tune in next week for part 2.
It is 12 after 1. You're listening to Upstart Live's launch show. You can listen on upstart.net.au. Also coming up later in the show, we have Max Robbins talking to Dr. Alan Duffy from Swinburne University about SpaceX's rocket landing. On the 13th of March, reporter for ABC's Four Corners, Linton Besser, and cameraman Louis Araglu were detained in Malaysia on the island of Kuching for allegedly crossing a police boundary to question Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak.
They were subsequently detained for a breach Article 186, which, as Linton described to the BBC, is obstructing a public official in the performance of their duties. Jacob Joybury has the story.
Did Linton cross a security cordon to get to the Prime Minister?
No. Linton did not cross the security line.
That's Louis Araglu, adamant Linton did not cross a security line.
If anything, there wasn't a security line. When we arrived, we weren't told of any so-called security line, or we weren't communicated to. We were just doing what we would normally do in any similar situation.
I asked Louis about the reaction from the Malaysian PM.
The initial reaction, he sweeps past Linton. He would have heard Linton. Linton was clearly a few decibels above everybody else. And he was polite and he was respectful, but he asked the question. Yeah, Jacob, you probably got one stab at a question, and that was the one question that Linton decided to ask. Not only once, but twice.
Louis was confused. He thought that they were doing the right thing and were just following the local media.
We made no contact physically with the Prime Minister. The local police authorities did that for him. He asked Linton, "Who are you? What are you? I don't know who you are, et cetera, et cetera." And Linton said, this is a press conference. Like I said earlier, we just followed the other media.
After a quick conversation with the authorities, Linton and Louis were escorted back to their van and photos were taken of their equipment and passports before being sent on their way. However, on the way back to their hotel, the police pulled them over.
As we drove, we were pulled over by the police and then re-detained. That's when we were asked to go to the police station.
Would you say that you ever felt like you were in any danger?
Did I ever feel threatened? No, I can't say I did. By then, the fact that our executive producer knew and the fact that DFAT knew, I was comfortable with that, and I was respectful with the police, and they were respectful to us. But I knew that the parcel being held meant at minimum we probably wouldn't be able to leave the island. We were potentially going to be used as an example and to send a message to other media outlets and to local media too. International media is one thing, it's the local media too. It also sends a strong message as well. If we were sort of charged and arrested and whatnot.
Their translator paid bail for the pair. 6 hours later, Linton and Louis were allowed to leave the police precinct. Prior to leaving, they had to fill out various statements detailing their account of what had happened earlier that night to satisfy the lawyers from both sides. From there, they were told to go back to the hotel and hurry up and wait for further instructions.
And all the days blended into one. We've probably got about 2 hours sleep in that 2 days.
On the Monday morning, the two were given their passports back but were asked to remain in Kuching, only to find out that night that to both of their disappointment, the charges would be placed against them. At 1 a.m. that night, Louis received a phone call from their lawyer, Mr. Tang.
He said, Linton. I said, no, it's Louis, the cameraman. And he said, oh, Louis. I'm downstairs. I said, oh, okay. And he said, I've got some news for you. Can you come and let me in? Went down and saw him, and I knew straight away from his body language that it was good news.
Mr. Tang informed the two that the charges were being dropped and showed them written confirmation from the Chief of Police detailing the terms of their release. What do you think made them release you?
I guess you could call it a backflip. So something happened between that time. All these decisions are, I guess, not made by the police. I'm pretty sure that these are, especially matters that they're international, above their pay grade. I'm not sure exactly who, but somebody has told them to basically let us go. But the more it drags on, the more the story's going to snowball or open up a can of worms, which I guess was their biggest fear.
Although Louis is no stranger to being detained overseas, having mentioned his previous confinement in Iran with colleague Tim Palmer, his biggest worry was one that was closer to home.
My biggest fear was my daughter's birthday is on the 27th of April. So I thought, okay, if heaven forbid we do get locked up, I was going to miss her Sophia's birthday, and that was upsetting. Everything else I can deal with.
That was Jacob Joyberry talking to cameraman Louis Eriglu. So Jacob, that all happened around a month ago. Do you have some updates on the story?
Yes. Recently, a Swiss corruption investigation into 1MDB run by the Swiss Office of the Attorney General has emerged recently, showing evidence of fraud totaling $3.5 billion, with evidence leading to Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak's family. This money was intended for the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. Last July, it was proven that $700 million was deposited into Razak's private bank account, but he never was convicted as he claimed that most of the money was donations from Saudi Arabia's royal family. Now that total exceeds $1 billion. There has been many in Malaysia's parliament calling for Razak's resignation, including former Malaysian leader Mahathir Mohamad, who said, "We must rid ourselves of Najib. If he's allowed to go on, the damage will be worse and worse."
Thank you. Reminder, don't go anywhere after 2. We have an exclusive full feature interview with Louis Eriglu right after the show.
Yeah, thanks again, Jacob, for getting us that update.
Thank you.
And remember, you are listening to Upstart Live. It is 18 past. And remember, you can find us on upstart.net.au and find us on social media channels, Snapchat, Twitter, all of the spaces.
All the social media.
Upstart Magazine, at Upstart Magazine. 2 weeks ago from now will be the 20th anniversary of the Port Arthur massacre. And as always, gun control is a hot topic surrounding this tragedy and Australia's reaction to it.
That's right, and we've had a look into the modern gun control debate and how Australia has changed as a result of Port Arthur. Here's Ben McCready with the story.
On the 28th of April 1996, Tasmanian man and mass murderer Martin Bryant single-handedly ended the lives of 35 people and injured 23 more in the small town of Port Arthur. Now, almost 20 years later, the effects of that harrowing day are still felt by the Australian people. The biggest change following the mass shooting at Port Arthur was the sweeping reform to firearms legislation, which saw more than 600,000 firearms removed from private ownership. Greens MP David Shoebridge says the reform on gun control was a hard-won campaign that was valuable and necessary for Australia.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that 1996 set of gun control legislation was extremely valuable. In fact, one of those moments where political leadership actually worked. This was a package of reforms that was put forward by John Howard. I think, full credit for him. It was politically hard for him, coming from the Conservative side of politics, to deliver on the reforms, but the reforms have clearly been successful. We haven't had another mass shooting since those reforms, and we've seen a dramatic reduction in firearm homicide and particularly firearms-related suicide. So, undoubtedly successful.
The New South Wales head of Firearm Owners United, Scott Hillard, believes that the 1996 gun reform overstepped, impacting the rights of legal firearm owners.
I'll start with what was good about it, and that was one thing and one thing only, and that was the widespread implementation of fairly explicit and stringent safe storage requirements. I think that the requirement for shooters before they actually purchase a firearm to have a proper safe storage facility and have police come out and inspect that safe and sign off on it, I think is a very sensible reform. The rest of the reforms, except for perhaps harmonisation of criminal background checks of people applying for a licence, have cost the public well over $1 billion, have inconvenienced to either a small extent or a great extent over 800,000 licensed shooters, and have achieved absolutely nothing.
Mr. Hillard believes that the biggest change to Australia following Port Arthur was a social one of growing resentment towards guns and gun owners.
I think probably the single biggest inconvenience, though, isn't an administrative one. It's the mentality that has come to assume that if you wish to own a firearm for a legal purpose, then you are, for all intents and purposes, treated like an assumed criminal, and the onus is on you to disprove that notion, not the other way around. A lot of firearm owners I've talked to will almost seem to have a persecution complex, and I think they are utterly sick of having spent the last 20 years trying to defend what is a legitimate and lawful activity.
According to Mr. Shoebridge, the pressure on the state and federal governments to relax gun control laws has gained momentum over the last 20 years.
Well, there's very clear threat to our firearms laws. We've seen in a number of states and territories, not just New South Wales, but places such as Queensland, we've seen a serious watering down of our gun control laws. There's building pressure on our gun laws, which requires effectively eternal vigilance. Whilst the 1996 laws were excellent, whilst they advanced community safety, that can't be the end of the road.
The anniversary of the Port Arthur massacre presents a peak in public discussion on gun control, a stark reminder of a nation's reaction to a tragedy that still resonates deeply with its people. I asked both Mr. Shoebridge and Mr. Hillard on their views regarding the 20th anniversary commemorations of Port Arthur.
This is a time for us, if you like, to do a health check. Not just slap ourselves on the back and say, well, wasn't this a terrific community response to what was an overwhelming tragedy? But it's also time to actually look honestly at our gun control laws and work out where they're working and not working.
You've clearly got some people who are involved there who find it quite cathartic to have commemorations that have come out and talk about their story. There are obviously others who would rather put it behind them and move on and not mention it again. I think that's entirely a matter for the individual. What I object to is the politicisation of that event by trying to use the commemoration as some sort of leverage to achieve their political goals.
April 28, 2016 marks the 20th anniversary of the Port Arthur massacre. A public commemoration service will be held at the Port Arthur Memorial Site, 12:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. This has been Ben McCready for Upstart Media.
That was Ben's story on the Australian gun control debate. But before we threw to that story, I think I may have made a mistake. I said 2 weeks ago, the Port Arthur massacre occurred. That was 20 years ago. 2 weeks till the 20th anniversary. And you're listening to Upstart Live, our flagship show where we talk current affairs, politics, and all that good stuff. You can tune in every week from Friday, 1 p.m. This is our launch show. So, Lisa, you may have heard that last week that a private company, SpaceX, managed to land a rocket which was launched to orbit in order to be reused for further missions.
Yeah, I was looking that up, actually. It's the first time this has happened.
Yeah, it's actually paving the way for cheaper and more accessible space travel and exploration.
It's quite the move forward in the space race. SpaceX, old term. SpaceX and its founder and CEO Elon Musk are actually only one of many recent private entities and individuals who are funding their own way to space and pushing these new boundaries in technology.
Yeah, I think producer Max Robbins sat down with Dr. Alan Duffy, science and communicator and research fellow at the Centre of Astrophysics and Supercomputing at Swinburne University.
Yeah, this is a big achievement. He talked about what it means for us Earthlings and our chances of getting into space.
Okay, so at about 6:45 a.m. our time on Saturday morning, this live stream to the world, broadcasting the just bizarre.
Sorry, we're having a
footage.
bit of
I mean
technical
bizarre, like
difficulties.
a
We'll
50s
be
B-movie concept.
back in a moment, trying to fix up the Alan Duffy interview. But before we do fix the interview, Lisa, there's an issue with the audio, but yes, there is no audio happening right now. But Lisa, Lisa,
to our next story.
Yeah, let's move on to our next story.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike, don't they?
I spoke to a marine biologist in the wake of the discovery that almost 50% of the Great Barrier Reef is suffering from bleaching. Reef authorities are in the process of discovering just how much damage has been done.
Yeah, along with this news came the announcement that Indian coal company Adania is planning on opening a new mine near Carmichael.
Yeah, and because of the risk the CO2 emissions would have with the opening of this new coal mine, the Australian Conservation Foundation is going to federal court with Environment Minister Greg Hunt.
Yeah, Lisa, you spoke with marine biologist John Birdle about the effects this mine will really have on the reef.
Yep. What are the chances of recovering the areas of coral that have been bleached?
It depends a little bit on the duration and magnitude of the bleaching. Mm-hmm. So a short period of bleaching, corals do have the capacity to recover, but if that bleaching is extended over a long period, or you get multiple bleaching events sort of one after the other, then the chances of the corals making a recovery are then diminished.
What would the increased CO2 emissions mean for the reef?
We're already seeing ocean acidification. So the more CO2 in the atmosphere translates to more CO2 in seawater, and that forms carbonic acid. And as a result, the acidity of the water increases, the pH drops. So at the moment, we're on track, that sounds like a good thing, it isn't, towards a drop of pH to about 7.7 by the end of this century, compared to a pre-industrial level of about 8.2. Now that may not sound like, a 0.4 pH unit, 0.5 pH unit drop, may not sound like very much, but that's a log scale. Mm-hmm. So that's actually quite a big increase in the acidity. And we know that the more acid the water, the harder it is for organisms like corals to deposit the calcium carbonate skeletons that they need.
And if the court rules in favor of the Australian Conservation Society, what would that mean for the conservationist community?
Well, everyone would breathe a great sigh of relief. If the court said it can't go ahead, I think that's a great start in terms of what we need to do to minimise emissions and cut back on our CO2 release into the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases. You know, obviously there's a lot else going on. The Adani mine is only one of, you know, a great many operations that are contributing to the CO2 burden in the atmosphere. But it's a start, and it's something that is very close to home and would mean a lot to a lot of people, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's all right.
We're going to try again with our package on SpaceX done by producer Max Robbins, and here goes.
Okay, so at about 6:45 a.m. our time on Saturday morning, this live stream to the world, broadcasting the just bizarre footage, and I mean bizarre, like a 50s B movie concept of how rockets should land. A Falcon 9 had delivered a payload up to a couple of hundred Ks. This payload would then go on to the International Space Station. At that point, the first stage rocket would then just tumble back and disintegrate. For SpaceX, that seems wasteful, so they turned the rocket around, and then firings of that main engine essentially slowed and targeted this tiny football field-sized barge sitting in the middle of the ocean that was able to catch it on that parabolic trajectory. So this is a unbelievably difficult thing to achieve. They haven't actually until now. This is the first. They've blown up four barges, or at least four first stage rockets trying to do this. They had previous success landing on an actual airfield. Well, why it's more difficult is simply because you're at sea. So you have something that's rocking, you have a very small target, and all the while you are being buffeted by winds of thousands of kilometers an hour, because that's how fast you're going through. It's insane. It is an insane project to try to undertake, and the fact that they've succeeded is a testament to the absolute brilliance of their engineers. They had to think, well, we can either throw away half our rockets or come up with this unbelievable solution. You can fly to Heathrow in your 747, your jumbo jet. You don't scrap it when you reach your destination, right? You fill it up and you fly back. So why would space be any different? And the reason space is so expensive is that you have a rocket, which is the pinnacle of human engineering. You launch it and then you just throw it away. You let it tumble in and crash into the ocean. So while a cost-cutting exercise in the sense of making space cheaper, it's such a radical improvement that it actually redefines how we can approach space. Now, you could argue you could start on the west coast of America and then try to land on the east coast. But the problem is people get nervous having rockets overhead. They tend to explode, there tend to be things falling off. So for historical reasons, we fly oversea to minimize the risks for people, which means if you want to have a rocket that's nearly empty of all its fuel, try to land, it just can't correct for that speed anymore. All it can do is just about slow and curve and fall and hit a target a few hundred kilometers downrange. In that case, unless you're very lucky and there's an island there, that means it's going to have to be a barge.
Have the odds in the past week just dramatically increased for you and I to get to space?
Look, I think they have. I think we had very, very long odds, and those have shortened, but they're still very long. Because when I say the costs have decreased, the SpaceX launch is about $60 million for a Falcon 9. Now, Elon Musk is ultimately wanting to get this this reusability of the rocket to be, it lands on the barge, give it a wash and reload, refuel, and it takes about $300,000 worth of fuel and fly off again. And you can do that about 20 times and then they would probably retire this spacecraft. So you're actually talking something now of the order of $3.3 million per launch, which is still too much for any one of us, but represents a staggering change in the market. When you think the space shuttle was $1 billion per launch, now we're talking 3.3. There are incredible potentials to get even better, ever bigger rockets that, just like you have in the airline industry, the bigger the airplane, the more people it can take for the same fixed weight or cost of engines, for example. We can do, or hope, that the same can apply for space, which means you can actually start to maybe dream that, yeah, for tens, maybe 100 grand, you can get your ticket up to space. And that means for a lot of us, that's the once in a lifetime trip. You just remortgage your house and you go to space. So the future is, there's still a long way to go, but it's so tantalizingly close. When you see the changes that astronauts undergo when they're going to space, and they always mostly come back as hippies, completely in love with Earth, having seen the fragility of our planet, it gives them a new perspective. And really, the most exciting thing is that the richest people on Earth will be amongst the first to experience that hopeful perception shift. And then they're the people with the funds to actually change the world. So hopefully they can become the first space tourists because they can afford the first steps. And then we'll hopefully be changed in the process.
That was our first video story done by producer Max Robbins. That was very interesting. That was really...
It was, yeah. Would you go into space if you had loads of money and you could afford it?
If I could afford... Actually, I think, because like, he talks about, if you go into space, you might become like this, you have this change in perspective and you become a better person. I could become a better person, maybe.
Could afford to become a better person, sure.
But like, it depends if I can afford it. But maybe, the rich and powerful can do that and they can be better people, hopefully.
For sure. You are listening to Upstart Live, our first show. I'm Lisa Burke with Ahmed Yusuf. And right now we have our Upstart media editor, Rachel Roberts, to tell us what kind of stories are going on the internet this week.
Yes.
Hey, Rachel.
Okay, well, I'll talk about my personal favourite story, which is about the tampon tax by Catherine McLeod. Obviously quite a well-discussed issue, but for those of you who don't know, the issue is that sanitary products like that are taxed 10% as if they were a non-essential item, but I'm sure lots of people would agree that it is in fact a necessary item. Other things that don't have this tax are sunscreen and condoms and nicotine replacement therapy. So I don't know how necessary those are. What I found really interesting about this article is that it makes the government $25 million a year, just sanitary products.
Wow.
I was shocked by that statistic. I thought that was huge. And they spoke to a girl who will remain known as Pippa, who works at a certain supermarket. And she is a bit radical in the sense that she's decided she's not scanning them at all. Everyone who wants to buy those sort of products at her cash register, get them for free.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. What do you think of that?
I think that's interesting, and I kind of like, it breaks the mold, because when you think about it, these are like everyday necessities.
Yeah, it is definitely an essential item. I think that all females would agree it is.
Yeah. I have 6 sisters and mother at home. Pretty sure they all need it.
Yeah, for sure.
I also thought it was a bit funny that like hockey and Abbott and everyone, whenever they discuss it, they're always like, oh yeah, it's definitely a necessity. Like, yeah, okay, but they don't do anything about it.
No.
But it's interesting that people would not put a tax on, say, nicotine products when obviously identifying that people that have addictions need help and, need an ability to actually, not be taxed for trying to fix like their living situation and their health situation at any given point. But
yeah,
women don't need tampons apparently.
Apparently not.
Apparently. Another one that was a bit interesting is by Tracy Stewart. It's about privacy laws protecting social media users, which is, a big topic. It's more about like data mining, which is when, big corporations will use all the information on the internet to kind of their advantage and, to
targeted ads.
Target ads, yeah. It kind of goes back to that old saying. I'm not sure how you'll feel about it, but like when they say, if you're not paying for something, then you are the product. Have you all heard that?
And also this idea of that we're all brands, and this whole kind of interesting way, and how that is kind of like social media is the antipathy of that, isn't it? Like all of us are brands on social media, and we're not paying for this, and therefore this idea that we are all open to all this advertising and all this exploitation.
Yeah. What do you think about your targeted ads on Facebook? Would you say they're pretty spot on?
I don't know. Like, I feel like some of them are not really spot on, and they're kind of weird. There's also these really weird kind of ads you see sometimes with dating websites, and it's not like the regular dating websites. There's these really niche, weird dating websites that are probably, not as legal as you might think.
Oh gosh.
I found my ads were pretty spot on. When I was applying for La Trobe, actually, I kept getting ads that were advertised for La Trobe's postgraduate study. So it was exactly targeting what I was doing.
Oh, that is pretty good. I tend to get a lot of baby stuff, so they must think I have a baby. Or maybe I've just been Googling babies. I didn't think I had been, but
Babies.
What's also interesting about this is how they're kind of different in different countries. Like how in Europe there are lots more laws and, they kind of have Bill of Rights to protect your privacy. But in Australia, not so much.
Interesting. Thanks for coming on the show, Rachel, and sharing all the interesting goings on the interwebs. Remember, you can find all these stories and more on upstart.net.au, and also follow the social media channels, Upstart Magazine on Twitter and on, I'm pretty sure, Snapchat and Facebook. Find us there, and also you're listening to Upstart Live, our weekly hour-long show from Friday at 1 p.m. And thanks again for coming on the show, Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I think we have our big launch show today, and we have Stesha Dochi at the launch site not far from us at La Trobe Studios. Hello, Stesha. Hello, Stesha. Are you there? Hello? We are not hearing her right now, but let's just... Hello, Stesha? Hello, was that hello, Stesha? Well, we can't get her at the moment. Thank you, Stesha, anyway, for trying to be our roving reporter. Now we're going into our sports segment.
We have a big sports. We have Simon Hill, Fox commentator, coming on the show today with Kyle and Toby.
Yes, we have our sports segment on right now. You'll listen. That's the sports music you're hearing, and we are on our sports segment. Hello, guys. You there?
Hey, guys. How are you
going?
It's been a massive week in the world of sport, and I don't think there's a better man to have alongside me to discuss it than you, Kyle. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm quite well. We'll kick off with the AFL. Yesterday there was a historic announcement for Port Adelaide. They revealed that they will play a game for premiership points in China next season, and it even had PM Malcolm Turnbull excited. While games have been played in New Zealand in recent years, the decision to move into China is a significant step forward for the AFL, as they target markets outside of Australia.
So they're going to China. I'm not sure why, to be fair. There's a lot of issues involved with it. There's the logistics and getting Channel 7 over. They don't actually have a team to play yet. I imagine there'll be air quality issues, and there's the issue of Northern Territory losing a game. So I'm really sceptical about how the Chinese people will take to it.
Cameron McAvoy has become the first man to take out the 50, 100 and 200 metre freestyle triple crown at the Australian Championships, while James Magnussen failed to place in the top two in any individual events. Kyle, what does this mean for his Olympic hopes?
His Olympic hopes, well, he's there as the last member for the 400 metre relay, so he still gets a gig, but as the fourth fastest person ever over 100 metres freestyle, he's not going in his pet event. He's had a bit of problems with his shoulder, Rico, and I think he's just having a little bit of mental block and struggling a little bit with the confidence and the movement of his shoulder. I think he'll bounce back for Commonwealth Games and the next Olympics. He's only just 25 either today or tomorrow, so he's still got plenty of time.
Plenty of time left in his body, you'd hope. The NBA regular season has finished with a bang as Andrew Bogut's Golden State Warriors surpassed the 1995-96 Chicago Bulls record of 72 wins, defeating the Memphis Grizzlies 125-104. However, it was overshadowed by a farewell to an NBA great, as Kobe Bryant scored 60 points in his final game to lead the Los Angeles Lakers to a come-from-behind win against the Utah Jazz. You're listening to the Friday Sports Wrap on Upstart Live.
58 points!
And that's all the time we've got for the Friday Sports Wrap today. Back to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the wrap.
Thanks, guys.
And we're going. What do we got now, Lisa?
We are waiting on Simon Hill, but we are we're moving on to our art segment actually with Ben
segment.
McCready.
In this the age of social media, we're inundated with entertainment content. But can we get to one place where we can inside on all of them?
I think Ben's gonna help us out with that. I think he's got some real insights into what's going on there.
Can he divide the good from the bad?
I hope so. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Ben, how's it going?
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, obviously we can hear you. We can hear
you sound great.
Loud and clear.
Sound great.
Just testing.
What have you got for us?
So, I'm doing our arts segment today. I don't know if you guys realise that or not.
Is it a new segment?
It might be.
Oh.
I'm pretty practiced at this though, so it's okay. So, we've got a doozy of a story here actually. In the arts industry, we've got $1.5 million being injected into funding for Victorian film, television, and game projects. That was done by the Andrews Labor government, and that happened this week. This Tuesday, in fact, where the Minister for Creative Industries, Martin Foley, announced 17 separate projects across those categories that would share in the $1.5 million. These projects include a documentary about Victorian musical prodigy Geoffrey Tozer, a feature film about a father and his son rebuilding their family, and a science-based television series being produced by the award-winning Sonia Pemberton. Sonia made a documentary in 2010 called Immortal. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of it. It was about the Fountain of Youth. It was very, like scientific Fountain of Youth. It was real interesting.
Cool.
And that was an Australian scientist who made that discovery. Some of the funding is also going into our game development industry, which is good for me because I love video games.
Yeah, you
and
brought
your
in this
giant laptop, right?
massive computer.
Yeah.
Like it weighs like 10 kilos.
Yeah.
It's just that's what you pay and play with when you're a hardcore gamer, I guess. Yeah, that's my laptop. I'm glad you guys were impressed with it.
You can take breaks from gaming and like lift your laptop as a way of getting exercise.
Bit of exercise, yeah. That's right. Yeah. So some of the funding is going to game development, including funding for Blockpocalypse, which is a mobile game developed by Dime Studios, and the very interesting Paperbark, which is a game where you play as a wombat in the Australian bush. It's very artistic, and it's been developed by former RMIT students. And whilst I'm sure we'd all love to see more funding for Victorian film and screen projects, this $1.5 million is just awesome news. Moving on from that, this weekend, starting at 6 p.m. tonight, in fact, we have the Supernova Pop Culture Expo. Supernova is well known for the talent it draws each year, and this year is no exception. Stars making an appearance include Jack Gleeson, which is Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
I hate him. Yeah.
Do you guys watch Game of Thrones?
I don't watch Game of Thrones,
I hate that guy.
Oh, Ahmed, you're missing out.
I just know about Maisie Williams, who was in Doctor Who, and she was like amazing.
Yeah, she's a great actress. Jack Gleeson actually gets harassed on the street because of his
character.
Yeah, because Joffrey's so just universally.
Seriously right, Joffrey. Who do you think you are?
There's also Dawn Wells, who played Marianne Summers in Gilligan's Island. She's now 77 years old.
Oh, Gilligan's Island. Massive throwback. Massive throwback.
Bonnie Wright, who was Ginny from Harry Potter. Diamond Dallas Page, who's a three-time World Wrestling Champion.
Yeah, I know. Oh, Diamond Dallas Page. Didn't he have like that spat with The Undertaker?
I probably had a spat with all of them, honestly.
Oh, yeah, I remember him. He had a spat with The Undertaker.
Going back to old wrestling
obviously,
days.
The Undertaker came through at the end.
You a big wrestling fan there?
Well, I used to but this is. They got rid of CM Punk, and when they got rid of CM Punk, they got rid of me. They took the heart and soul of WWE, and CM Punk, he talks pipe bombs and the truth.
Okay.
No, that's literally his thing.
Yeah.
He drops microphones as pipe bomb, like a mic drop.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
He was the the forerunner for the mic drop, was he? He started that.
He started the mic drop.
He had the greatest like music as well for his entrance. It was so good.
Just geeking out hard on Champ.
CM Punk. He went to MMA though, I think.
But forget Diamond Dallas Page. Okay, the biggest stars of this year's Supernova Pop Culture Expo, Jade and Ryan from Cheese TV.
Cheese TV. Oh my God. Do you know the formative moment in my primary school life, and I'm gonna say life in general, was watching Cheese TV and Dragon Ball Z when Goku became Super Saiyan. Oh my God! Like
you're taking me back. You're preaching to the choir.
You remember that? I kid you not. My mom was like to me, Ahmed, come on, we gotta go to school. I'm like, Hoya, I have to watch Hoya Somali, Mum in Somali. Hoya, I gotta watch freaking Dragon Ball Z and watch Goku become Super Saiyan. I was a bit sad about Krillin dying. Sorry, spoilers for people that hadn't watched the episode.
I feel like if you watched it in primary, it's
no
longer spoilers.
It's not spoilers anymore.
This cartoon's also about 20 years old at this point.
Exactly.
It's not a cartoon.
It's life.
It's not
life.
a cartoon.
It's not just a cartoon. It's life. Yes.
We also have another segment for our arts piece today. The current working title is Trailer Trash.
Trailer Trash.
Dun, dun, dun. I think someone did that. Damn. So the first trailer, we're basically just going to look at trailers here, and these are newly announced trailers. We'll just have a back and forth, check out how cool these trailers are. The first one's Doctor Strange.
Stephen Strange. Forget everything that you think you know.
Your work saved the lives of thousands. What if I told you that reality is one of many?
I don't believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief.
You wonder what I see in your future? Possibility.
That was the Doctor Strange trailer, a new Marvel movie. I wonder how many Marvel movies they're going to release.
Marvel is like, I'm geeking out on this superhero Marvel fan, like everything.
You never get tired of it.
I would never get tired of it.
I'm
but
tired of it.
What DC kind of disappointed me with the Superman Batman movie. It just, and has everyone seen that video of I'm forgetting his name. See, he's so forgettable. Batman in what's his name? Ben Affleck. Affleck. Oh my God.
How could you forget Ben Affleck?
He's pretty forgettable. But anyway, Ben Affleck. Like the picture of him, the video of him. He was just so sad.
Oh, is it the moment that Ben Affleck realized that the movie was a failure?
I think he realized his career was about over.
Yeah. So what is Doctor Strange about, though?
So Doctor Strange is, like you said, it's going to be the latest in the Marvel films coming after Civil War, which comes out in a month, I think. And it's about a neurosurgeon who has a horrible car accident, and he gets nerve damage and can't perform surgery anymore. So he goes and gets magical powers, basically, to replace that.
Thanks for... let's go to the next trailer.
Yeah, so next trailer we have coming up, got announced this week as well, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
None of my killers want the what might not happen. We only got 6 minutes.
We'll just do a short what the what.
You're an interesting man, Mr. Scamander. Just like your suitcase, I think there's much more to you than meets the eye. I wonder, what makes Albus Dumbledore so fond of you, Mr. Scamander?
Here we go, trailers. I wait for the things to disappear.
So that was the latest. That's the latest installment in the Harry Potter franchise.
The newest, yeah. That's not one. This one's not based on a book.
No.
It's based on a book that exists
That's
in
the-
Harry Potter. Yeah. So this is a brand new foray for J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series.
Oh, I'm like, I cannot even describe how happy I am this is happening.
I'm with you on that.
Harry Potter was life. Like, if you are a 90s kid and didn't, like, even if you weren't a 90s kid and you did not absolutely love Harry Potter, what are you doing with your life?
I've been trying to get my young sister to read them, and she absolutely refuses. And I'm trying to describe how it changed my life and how it could change hers.
I think the movies stop a lot of younger people from
Mhm.
getting involved. They've already know the story. Why
Did you
read
know
it?
some of the original books cost like a couple of $100,000, like because of the memorabilia?
Interesting.
But yeah, but anyway, thanks, Ben. That was
Thank
Ben
you, Ben.
McCready giving us the latest on what's been going on in the arts.
Thanks,
We're-
guys.
Yeah, giving us a bit of culture on Upstart Live. You're listening to Upstart Live, our weekly show every Friday from our studios at La Trobe. And now we're going into our What the What segment. Alana Mazurk gives us the latest and the lowdown on what's been going in today's news. What the what?
Okay, guys, again, another crazy round of stories. The first one's pretty cute though. Like it's not really a crazy story, but I throw it in there because I love dogs. So imagine this in Russia. The Russian police. God, okay, the Russian police. Yeah, we've got that far. Are hoping to turn little Welsh corgis into police dogs, and they've got a maximum height of 12 inches. These dogs, so move over German shepherds. But they're doing it because they are lowered to the ground. They're going to try them into the bomb sniffing squad. So that's just a little crazy story there that I love.
Adorable police dog.
China has now declared that it is no longer a crime to play the hedonistic, their word not mine, game of golf. In October 2015, the Communist Party banned all 88 million of its members from joining golf clubs as part of its anti-corruption campaign.
What does golf have to do with
Yeah.
corruption?
We'll soon find. I don't know, but it doesn't matter because now the ruling Communist Party has had a change of heart. And they've decided that playing golf itself is not wrongdoing, provided officials pay out their own pockets. I think they saw it as like the rich play golf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make all kinds of shady dealings on the golf course.
Yes. A Marysville, which I assume is in America somewhere, woman says her love of potato chips has saved her life. We have a picture of her up there now with her bag of Ruffles.
Hey, like Smith's saved many a life. You know?
Well, but she's claiming it saved her life by she ate a chip, it got lodged in her throat was sore, and when she went to the doctor looked at her tonsils and realised there was something wrong, did a biopsy, it ended up being cancer.
Hey,
So,
hey,
the
like-
chip saved her life, man, and she was eating Ruffles like every day for 20 years.
Ruffles should give her like a
Every single
lifetime
day.
supply of chips.
You'd think so. That's pretty good advertising right there. A man in his 40s is believed to have been taken to hospital in Belfast last night after a brick that he threw at a charity shop window rebounded in his face. That's what you get. That's karma. It's a charity shop window. It's for a suicide prevention place. And according to UTV, the brick rebounded off the window and hit him in the face while it was outside the offices. So that's what you get. Anyway, a number of volunteers are helping to fix the property, which is good. There's a little bit of good side. And I do hope he's okay, but seriously, don't do that again. I'm not sure if everybody's heard about this. We'll get the photo up now, but an ancient mummy has been discovered in Mongolia, and it seems to be way ahead of its time fashion-wise by wearing Adidas trainers. Or I say Adidas.
Oh.
How do you say it? Adidas in America?
I say Adidas.
Yeah, but
Is
do you
that
say
how you-
Nikes or Nike?
Nike.
I say Nike.
Anyway, we'll say Adidas. We'll just keep going. According to The Sun, scientists unearthed the 1,500-year-old remains of the woman's hands and feet up in the high Altai Mountains. But the cutting-edge footwear with the trademark stripes of the sportswear brand is causing a stir on the internet and fueling talk of time travel.
Ooh.
It's crazy because actually the photo does look like she's wearing Adidas
Like
shoes.
I feel like Adidas probably dug her up,
Yeah.
put the shoes on.
This is great
without a doubt.
advertising.
Without a
It's
doubt.
great advertising.
That's the
and-
only way they're going to do it. Yeah.
And Alana, thank you for
No
your
worries, guys.
what this week.
Anytime. Actually, next week.
Next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week for
We'll
What
see
the
you
What.
next week. You've been listening to Upstart Live. Remember, stick around for our full length, a full feature length interview with Louis Ergalou, who talks all about how it was like being detained in Malaysia, with Jacob Joyberry. And here is the interview.
First up, Louis, just wanted to run by you. We'll get your first-hand account of what exactly happened on the day.
Okay, so my reporter Linton Besser and I were sent to Malaysia to cover a story on an investigative story on what's happening over there, and try and get some answers. But mainly we were filming in KL for the majority of our assignment, and Linton had basically asked for an interview with the Prime Minister, and we didn't get any. We didn't get a single reply, and so he decided to find out the Prime Minister's movements and see if we can attend any sort of any functions or gatherings or press meetings. So Linton and I hopped on a plane from KL to Kuching and landed at about 8 p.m. And Prime Minister was to appear at a mosque for a gathering at about 8:30. So we literally drove straight from the airport at Kuching to the mosque and pulled the camera out. The driver dropped us off, pulled the camera out. I set up a tripod ready for any speeches in the mosque, and then quickly, literally turned the camera on, said, Linton, can you test the camera? Can you test the microphone? And he said, test. I could hear him. And we went to the entrance to the mosque where 2 or 3 other camera operators and still photographers were standing by as well, waiting for the Prime Minister. So we just decided to go next to them. And I literally just turned the button on and, getting some extra cutaway shots, i.e., some police or other photographers, some scene-setting shots. And then the entourage, the whole sort of convoy drove up, and police, lights, etc. And then the Mercedes stops. I think it was a Mercedes, and out comes the Prime Minister, and we just followed the other media and followed him back. And so during the walk back with the Prime Minister, Linton decided to throw in a question.
And that question was, Mr. Prime Minister, what do you have to say about the hundreds of millions of dollars in your account, yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. And what I did notice was that the Prime Minister, when Linton identified himself, he said, I know, Mr. Prime Minister, it's ABC here, and then he acknowledged Linton, and then when Linton started his question, he turned away from him, and acknowledged meaning he looked at him, he kept walking, and no response, and Linton decided to ask it again, and that's when he was pulled away. Now Linton, and I'm not sure I'm pretty sure this was by accident. Usually I'd be next to him, and if I was right next to him, things would have been different. But because Linton and I got separated, just by the sea of people, and we observed all the rules, the usual rules, i.e., don't get too close, or just follow with the security as they're walking down. we sort of got separate. He was on the other side of the security line. He was behind the police, but I was on a complete opposite side. And because of that, as the Prime Minister walked past, Linton was in the background. Normally he'd be next to me, which means I wouldn't probably be able to see him. And the other thing is, because we were separated, he was whisked away first. And so I basically was there for another 10 seconds, getting other shots. I could hear everything, and I lost Linton in the sea and thought, right, okay, so he's getting pulled away. I've got to get ready. And then they turned around, looked at me, and they said, hello? I said, yes. Are you with that guy? I thought about it for a second. I said, with that guy, and I was asked to go with them as well.
Do you know how you and Linton managed to get separated? Because you said that he managed on the opposite side of you to the police.
Yeah, well we started together, and we walked back, and we were sort of walking back with the security, with the police and the security in front of me, and then behind that was the Prime Minister. So it's just one of those things. We weren't cabled up. It was on a radio mic. I knew that a cable would be problematic, and Linton hasn't really, he hasn't done much television in that sort of television anyway. So I thought it'd be better if we weren't cabled up. It's just going to be a mess. And so he had a radio mic with him, and Jill, I don't exactly know why. I mean, these things happen anyway. Whether you're filming Malcolm Turnbull in Sydney, or the president or the Republican race, or Republican Democratic races in America, these things happen. Just as part of it's just the nature of our job, that you end up in one place or another. But you pretty much can eyeball each other anyway. But I think it was just part of it. It was just the way it happened. Basically, it was just walking back. He was probably to the left of me, and I just kept going back.
Okay. Can you answer this one in a full sentence for me? Did Lyndon cross a security cordon to get to the Prime Minister?
No. Linton did not cross the security line. If anything, there wasn't a security line that I could see. It was we went where it was, and when we arrived, we weren't told of any so-called security line, or we weren't communicated to. We were just doing what we would normally do in any similar situation. Does that make sense, mate?
Yes, it does make perfect sense. Thank you.
All right, mate. Okay.
So you said that the Prime Minister just flat out ignored Linton. Was there any other reaction on his behalf?
No, because by the initial reaction, he if you look at the vision, he sweeps past Linton. I'm pretty sure Linton, he would have heard Linton because quite clear. Linton was clearly a few decibels above everybody else, and and he was polite and he was respectful, but he asked the question, and Jacob, you probably got one stab at that at a question, and that was the one question that Linton decided to ask, and not only once but twice.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on. Did you see the Prime Minister direct you to be escorted away and arrested?
No, he's we other people do that for him. We made no contact verbally or physically with the Prime Minister. So the local police authorities did that for him. He asked Linton, "Who are you? What are you? I don't know who you are," et cetera, et cetera. And Linton, said, there's a press conference, because we were told there's a press conference there as well. And, and we like I said earlier, we just followed the other media, taking photos back with him.
Okay. You said that the policeman said he didn't know who you are. Do you think maybe there was some sort of need to get permission prior to be there?
Well, that's a bit difficult when you just get off the plane.
Yeah.
So, and do you know what? I don't know the answer to that one. I'm not privy to Malaysian media cultural or rules or regulations to, especially Sarawak-specific media laws. But like I said, we did exactly what other media were doing there at the time. So, i.e., we stood our ground, we held our position, and when he came, we walked back with him, and not in an aggressive way, in a respectful way. When we were asked to stop, we stopped. We didn't deliberately seek out to break any security laws, and nor did we ever discuss that. We didn't decide to go across any lines. Definitely not. And once we were asked to stop, we stopped. As you can see, we didn't follow him. We cooperated 100%, 150%, and then we were asked to go back to the van. They looked at our details. They took photos of our passports, etc. Then we were asked to leave there, and as we drove, we tried to get the next flight anyway, but they were all full. So we went to the hotel, and we were pulled over by the police, and then I guess re-detained a second time.
I see.
And that's when we were asked to go to the police station.
Okay. From there, how did the police treat you?
Oh, they're very respectful. There was nothing angry. They were not angry. There was no anger. It was by then. It was clear that that there was things had changed, and they decided to let us know that we were going to be we were arrested under Section 186.
Okay. Could you please describe what Section 186 is?
Well, no one at the police station seemed to know clearly either. So it was obstructing a public servant during the course of their duty, I think, or something like that. So they were looking it up in their books there as well. So, but it was there was not any stage where we how do I say this did get aggressive inside the police station at all. We were asked to hand over our passports, and I asked, will we get them back? And the gentleman said yes, but we never did get them back. And also, our equipment was looked at. All the cases that I had to be opened up, and they went through everything. Like I said, we cooperated 150%. And then we were asked to sign a statement, and I guess I spoke to Linton and I said, look, two things we should, if this escalates, because it seemed to just slowly escalate, I thought we should get the ambassador involved. We really should. And so he spoke to our executive producer, and Sally Nova managed to get hold of DFAT, and to the point where they contacted us, and we made sure that the police knew that the DFAT was made aware of our situation.
So they did in fact allow you access to Australian diplomatic officials.
We had our phones still, and so as a result, we were able to make contact with our executive producer, and who contacted DFAT, and then DFAT I guess contacted us. So but did they physically come down? No, no one thought that would be necessary at the time. What we did get was permission to call a lawyer, and so we contacted our lawyer.
Oh, cool.
A local lawyer who came down and assisted us about an hour, and he came at about midnight. And from then on, he was by our side, and he was he's a good man to have on your side.
Sounds like it. You said things started to escalate slowly. Would you say that you ever felt like you were in any danger?
That's a good question. It was a bit of a blur because we've basically been up since 6 in the morning, so all the days were blending into one. It's quite a long shoot, this one, in 7 days. So that started early, and by then it was like 1 in the morning. Did I ever feel threatened? No, I can't say I did. I thought. Look, by then, the fact that our executive producer knew and the fact that DFAT knew, I was comfortable with that, and I was respectful with the police, and so and they were respectful to us. They were just doing their admin stuff at the time. So at the time, no, I didn't, but I knew that in terms of escalating, I thought, look, this could go either way. This could either be we could let go, we could be held there until other assistance comes, or we could be under house arrest. Or but I knew that the pass was being held was meant that at minimum we probably wouldn't be able to leave the island.
Okay. When you were in the police station, were you ever hinted at or told, or in any way, that you might be spending jail time?
The lawyer mentioned law of Section 186 and what that meant. A fine and jail term, yes.
Okay.
The worst case scenario was jail term.
Okay. Have you received a fine?
Beg pardon?
Have you guys received a fine for encroaching upon the act?
Well, no. I'll leave that with my lawyer to discuss if that's all right.
No, fair enough. I don't want to push anything.
Parties. But what I can say is our translator, he put up the bail for us to when we were allowed to go. Even though they held our passports, we made bail through our fixer stroke translator. And I don't know, are you familiar with the term fixer?
Not entirely, no.
Okay, a fixer, especially on overseas assignments, is your translator stroke producer. And you would have a fixer in, would have a fixer in Moscow, would have a fixer that people just use in Delhi, New Delhi, or Indonesia, et cetera, et cetera. And what they do is they, the contacts, they're not doing that. And more importantly, they translate when required. The local area, anyone better than Vincent and I will definitely know. And so to go to people, he was held as well, but he didn't get charged. And he put up the bail. God love him.
Sounds like a good guy. So they detained your fixer for what reason?
Just purely the fact that he was with us. But he was he was it's purely the fact that he was with us. But he didn't get. I'm pretty sure he didn't get to have to sign any statements or anything. He was just it was just a function that we needed. And I guess until the lawyer was there, he was there with us too.
Okay, cool. How come you were released in the end?
You mean 2 days later, 2-3 days later, or released from the police station?
Both. We'll go over how you were first released from the police station. You said you were first
okay.
bail.
Let's go to the first one then. 6 hours later, look, after we made bail, you and Linton can go, but you cannot leave Fitching. That's fine. So we signed our statement with the lawyers next to us, and we gave our statement of what we thought happened. I.e., at no intention did we go to break a police line. We cooperated, and when we were asked to leave, we left. The 3 main points, and so pure and simple. Once they were happy, once we were happy, the lawyers were happy. We were able to leave to wait further instructions, and the bail went till Wednesday. So from Wednesday onwards, it was either resubmitted or we were allowed to go. So it was basically it was from then on it was hurry up and wait, and so we went back to the hotel, and I guess by then the media. The news had come out, and we were in the hotel awaiting further instructions or any further news. And I guess and all the days blended into one, and we've probably got about 2 hours sleep in that 2 days.
Does not sound fun at all. Does not sound fun. So you eventually did get your passports back. I have seen photos of that. How did that go down? Did they just hand them over?
Our lawyer said I think it was the next morning. I've written this down somewhere. So my apologies.
That's okay. Take your time.
Actually, no. The fixer, the lawyer spoke to the fixer, and said, we should meet at the hotel. The police. We're going to meet us there and return both our passports. And that happened poolside at the hotel because the reason the PM was there was a big sort of government function there, and various other high-profile ministers were at the hotel in the foyer at the time when we were getting our passports back. So the police decided not to, cause any sort of extra angst. So they decided to meet us at the hotel, and it was delightful. I the police in return, and he said, "Okay, here's your 2 passports. Sign this. You still can't go, but you can have your passports back." And then that was the next step in the ever-changing saga. So we had to wait till Monday So basically, we spent the day there. Monday for any further results. Monday midday. Our lawyer was in contact throughout the day. No news by Monday midday. No news at all Monday afternoon, and it wasn't until Monday night that our lawyer said we should have a meeting. Mr. Tang said we should have a meeting. So we had a meeting, myself, Mr. Tang, Linton, Adam Harvey was there at the time with his cameraman, and he's based in our Jakarta bureau, and he came over to basically cover the story for us in news. And so we're all in the room, and also Victor was there, and the lawyer's son, Gordon, was there as well. And we had a conference call with Sydney, and basically we were all informed that they were going to press. They did want us to appear at court the next day, 8:30, and that we would have to decide whether we enter a plea, guilty or not guilty. And I guess we had to prepare for that. So that conference call was with various Gavin Morris and Bruce Belsham and Sally, the executive producer, and an ABC lawyer. And so we decided to reserve our judgment to see what the charges were exactly the next day, and see what And once that happened, then we'd decide the next strategy. And this all goes with me telling you earlier about the so-called escalation. You know, one thing would happen, and then it'd go to another level, and then et cetera, and just in steps. It would back down a little bit, and then get with the passport return, and then back up again. So, there was breaking news literally twice the hour, and so we left it at that. It was a long day. That was a long day too, but I'm used to that. And at one, I was still sort of managing metadata and copying cards, and that's what I do. I just use a laptop and I just back things up and double back things up and organise gear. So I'm always busy anyway. And at 1 a.m, the lawyer, Mr. Tang, rang. I thought, well, who's this? At 1 a.m. And he said, Linton. I said, no, it's Louis, the cameraman. And he said, oh, Louis. I'm downstairs. I said, oh, okay. And he said, I've got some news for you. Can you come and let me in, please? Because it's one of those hotels where you need the card.
Yeah.
Went down and saw him and Gordon, and I knew straight away from his body language that it was good news. And we got in the elevator, and I said, wow, it's good, isn't it? And he said, yes. And he started to tell me, and I said, let's wait for Linton, and et cetera. So I took him up into my room. I said, can you wait here? I'll go get Linton. So Linton, by then, he had a long day, and he'd basically shut up shop. So I banged on his door and I said, Linton, you need to get up. He said, who is it? I said, it's Louis. You need to get up, mate. You need to get up and come to my room now. He got up and he said, what is it? I said, Mr. Tang's here and he wants to speak to us. And I said, I think it's going to be good. And so he got dressed. He went to the room. And I said, wait here. I've got to go get Adam, who's going to be filing on his story. So I banged on Adam's door too. I said, Adam, and he took a few goes of knocking, and he eventually came out. And I said, Adam, mate, you need to come to the room. Mr. Tang's here, and he's going to let us know. Because not only was Adam there to cover the story, he was there as support as well, as a colleague. And in situations like that, it's important, especially for as things change by the hour. So he came in and we were told the news then.
Awesome. So pretty much you bailed straight after, just got out as fast as you could?
What was that again?
So when you received news that you could officially leave Malaysia, did you leave as fast as you could, or did you hang around to tie up loose ends, or?
I just said, listen, I believe it when we were on the plane, because I just prepared myself for the worst, and that's how I am, and because that way you're prepared, and mentally and whatnot. So it was good news and whatnot. He said, listen, we have to go to the police station at 8:30 the next day, and front them and sign a couple of things, and then we will be escorted to the airport. And I said, yep, that works fine. Linton was happy with that. We talked and we let Sydney know, and then it was a complete. I guess you could call it a backflip.
Yeah.
So something happened between that time. I mean, all these decisions are, I guess, not made by the police. I'm pretty sure that these are, especially matters that are international, above the pay grade. So they, I'm not sure exactly who, but somebody has told them to basically let us go.
Well, that's very good for you. Probably one last question before I hand it to Max. What do you think made them release you? Without charges?
A number of reasons, and I guess, and we spoke about this at the police station, and I said, look, they should really, perhaps they should, this could go two ways. They could set up an example, right, and that's what I was prepared for, i.e., do not enter Malaysia thinking that you can, just throw questions, i.e., et cetera, or actually, more importantly, don't enter Malaysia without, how do I say this? be prepared for the possibility of either detention or being detained or being charged or any other more dire consequences. So I guess we were potentially going to be used as an example about and to send a message to other media outlets and to local media too. International media is one thing; it's the local media too. It also sends a strong message as well. If we were sort of charged and arrested and whatnot, but so that's one thing. And the other thing is that let's now that it's escalated and let's let them go before it turns into an even bigger, a more major international incident. So Linton and I were talking about this actually at the police station. I said, look, perhaps they might let us go earlier, and hose it, and it won't be as big. But the more it drags on, the bigger, the more the story's going to snowball and or open up a can of worms, which I guess was their biggest fear.
So do you think they were scared of other stories like this getting out, if they were to make an example? So you said you said that you thought they were scared of opening up a can of worms on the issue.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe they thought that this would spark an investigation into other times where this has happened with local media, perhaps, where local media has been suppressed?
Yeah, I guess they thought that it could open up a can of worms and or and from just this 1 or 50 seconds worth of vision make which was problematic for them. Linton's question because they clamped down hard on that it would the consequence for them would be far worse.
Hmm.
Now I'll tell you one thing, Josh. I've been detained before in Iran, of all places, and with another colleague, Tim Palmer, for filming an anti-government demonstration, and so and various other various other police stations. I've been held in the Middle East, detained there and questioned, and so I was sort of used to it. Look, I could have done without it actually, but I'm sort of used to it, so I was quite calm about it all. I was just going through my head the motions and whatnot. But it was Linton's first time, and so he, we talked to each other a fair bit, and I'd try and let him know about my experiences. And I said, and so we were able to support each other, and the fact that the lawyer was there too, and the other colleague from Jakarta, Adam Harvey, who was just brilliant. Having support in a situation like that is really, really important. In Iran, when we got arrested, the ambassador came down and he pulled us out before it literally got to a major international incident. But Iran is a different case altogether.
I can imagine. How do you think Linton went with the whole thing? Like, is he holding up okay?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, but both of us, the media thing comes to mind is, okay, what are our family and friends going to say and whatnot. So Linton, because it's just, my wife was used to it actually, and she just wrote back and said, look, just hold your ground and just seek help and just seek legal help, and I did, and Linton spoke to his wife and spoke to his dad, and he dealt it with that way, and so it was good to have the phones with us to have that support. Look, I'll tell you one thing. My biggest fear was my daughter's birthday is on the 27th of April, so I thought, okay, if heaven forbid we do get locked up, I was going to miss her Sophia's birthday, and that was upsetting. Everything else I can deal with, but yeah.
Well, I'm very glad you got out in time. With plenty of time to
Thank
spare.
you. Yeah. No, and thank you.
All right, that was Louis Eroglu from Four Corners, who was recently detained but fortunately released from Malaysia. I'm Jacob Joyberry, who was lucky enough to have the interview with him last night. It's a great experience, great guy to talk to, and I'm really hoping everything goes well in their further investigation.